Okay, what if I told you you could transform your marathon time by an hour from 3:59 to 2:59 in just 9 months? It sounds huge, right? But with the right approach, it's absolutely possible. And today I'm going to break down exactly what I'd focus on to make that leap. I'm Grantham, a coach and professional ultra runner. More than 50% of the runners that I coach are working towards running a sub 3 hour marathon this year. And the vast majority of them will achieve it. Why? Well, that's a bit of a cheat on my side, or preferential selection. I don't care how fast you are or how much talent you have. I only care that you're committed and that you really want it. Work ethic and dedication are the primary traits that I look for in runners. And if that sounds like you and you want to run much faster this year, get in touch by booking a call via the link in the video description. So Sportslad asks, Lee, what would you prioritize if you had 9 months to go from 3 hours and 59 for the marathon to a 2 hour 59 marathon? We know what the goal is, 3 hours for the marathon. We also know the time frame, 9 months. So in 9 months, we want to move from the current state of 4 hours for the marathon to 3 hours for the marathon. We want to leap forward an hour, which is moving from 5 minutes and 41 seconds per kilometer to 4 minutes and 15 seconds for the duration of a marathon. It sounds wild, right? And it is, and that's why we're interested, because it's exciting enough to get us out of bed and to make us into that sub 3 hour marathon runner. What does your typical 4 hour marathon runner look like? Now, I'm generalizing here big time, but the typical 4 hour marathon runner is running 3 or 4 times per week. And that consistency gets a lot more consistent as they've got a marathon booked. They can see it somewhere in the future within the next 6 months. All of a sudden they'll go from 1 or 2 times per week running, or very much running on an ad hoc basis, to putting that consistency into play. And with that lack of consistency, or that consistency only when we know we're going to be racing, means that it's much more difficult to get that structure of the week working for you. So that faster session and longer session, not only is it longer to implement that and get it working for you and see the compound over the weeks, the improvements, it's also not happening throughout the year like it would be for a sub 3 hour marathon runner. If you look at the difference between a 4 hour marathon runner and a 3 hour marathon runner, typically the 3 hour marathon runner, running is just a bigger priority for them. It's higher up on their list of priorities. So maybe they've got family number 1, career number 2, and running is a close third. What that means is it's happening more. They're more consistent over the years, and then that allows them to become much more specific quicker so that they can attack that sub 3 hour marathon goal. And it's likely that they will have already implemented a structure, so they're already running faster on a regular basis and running further, gradually running further on a regular basis, so that the structure is already in place before they begin to attack this specific goal of running 4 minutes and 15 seconds per kilometer for the entire distance of a marathon. When it comes to weight training, a 3 hour marathon runner, probably 50% of the time, they're completely bought into weight training as a tool to become a faster runner. If you take that to a 2:20 marathon runner, it's more like 99% of runners understand that weight training will make them a faster runner and be more robust and therefore injured less. So all he needs to do to go from 3:59 to 2:59 is start working, acting, and training like that 2 hour 59 marathon runner. But unfortunately, we've got a few steps to cover before we get to that point where you can actually handle the load, handle the training load of working like a 3 hour marathon runner. So here are 5 key points to moving forward from 3 hours 59 to 2 hours 59. Number 1, you're currently running 3 or 4 times a week, and that's only when you book a marathon. Let's move that up to 5 to 6 times. Now, before you get frightened and think, oh, I won't be able to handle that volume, I won't be able to handle the mileage, I'm gonna break. Those extra 2 runs are very light, easy recovery runs. And therefore, we're boosting the volume, we're boosting the overall mileage, but it's all building aerobic base. So we're building that engine so that you can tap into it with all your running, but especially when you go faster so that your body can handle it. Your running body is used to running over the ground, moving over the ground, and therefore not just your muscles and your cardiovascular system is improving, but your tendons and ligaments are getting strong, which is incredibly important once we start to train like a 3-hour marathon runner. So we're going to build that aerobic base. And if you think of 3 to 4 times running, let's say 4 times running, average when you go out there, you're doing 5 miles or 8 kilometers, 32 kilometers of running. If you can get to double that, and we take that over a period of 3 to 6 months, so we gradually do it and therefore it's safe, then what you've got is a completely different type of runner who's able to do much more in the week. So we want to get to a week where it's recovery easy fast, rest, recovery easy long. Recovery easy fast, rest, recovery easy long. It doesn't need to get any more complicated than that for a sub 3-hour marathon runner. So I would quickly focus on getting my week to look like the training week of a 3-hour marathon runner. So gradually building up to that, and then it would look something like this. Monday, recovery run, 6 kilometers. I'm gonna work in distance so that it makes it easier to count the overall mileage over the week. That my sole focus for that recovery run is to feel better and fresher at the end of the run than the start of the run, the day before, Sunday being the long run. Tuesday, easy run, just 8 kilometers. My sole focus there is again, enhance that recovery and feel fresher at the end, but get to a point where I feel good enough, I feel well and fresh enough to hit Wednesday's interval session tomorrow. So what that might look like at the end of the easy run is 10 times 15 second strides. So I'm teaching my body to move over the ground faster. I'm improving that running economy. Then I've got Wednesday interval session. This is a big session for the week. There's the Wednesday interval sessions, there's the weekend long run. It's important that I get the most out of my body on this Wednesday interval session. The total volume might be no more than 10 kilometers, but it's not about the quantity, it's about the quality. So it might look something like 6 times a kilometer at the pace that I want to run the entire marathon for. Now, if that has to start with 4:45 per kilometer or 5 minutes per kilometer, and we gradually move that forward over the weeks, that's your starting point. The focus on that interval session is you consistently doing an interval session every Wednesday for months and a training schedule at a time, not just hammering one interval session, running as fast as you possibly can for those reps and feeling like you've conquered the world. It's not about that, it's about the consistency. Thursday is a complete rest, and I'd highly recommend that you have one complete rest day in a week. It's gonna help build your consistency over the weeks and months. It's also gonna give you that psychological break. Friday looks a lot like Monday, just a recovery run, 6 kilometers. And again, the sole purpose is to recover from that interval session, feel fresher at the end of the recovery run so that I'm ready to do the easy run tomorrow. Saturday, easy run, 8 kilometers. And again, purpose, feeling fresher at the end to a point where I can do 10 times 15 second strides, so I'm ready to do that long run tomorrow. Sunday, long run. Now you've got to be aware that this is one of the 2 key sessions of the week where you've got to get that improvement, you've got to get that super compensation. So it's really important that you're fresh and ready enough to hit that Sunday long run. And initially, that might just be long, slow distance. A nice long run for me is 25 kilometers. And if initially that's long, slow distance, that's the point in which you're still able to have a conversation with your buddy. So the total volume there is just 63 kilometers. And if you add in the warm-ups and cool-downs, you're looking at about 70 kilometers. We're well on our way to starting to train towards that sub 3-hour marathon. Now, you're gonna get people all around you, and there'll be people in the comments, no, I've done 120 kilometers per week, and I still couldn't break 3 hours. Everybody is an individual. And so if you can get to a point where you can run a 2-hour 59 marathon or 50 kilometers per week, why would you not do that? So that when you start to do more later, those gains are exponential. That is the single most important thing that I understood about my own training very quickly that moved me forward to be able to run for my country at both the marathon and the ultra marathon. Number 2, the way that we make this a successful project to hit 2 hours 59 is to be able to run marathon pace in our training. And so ideally, you'd be coming into this training and you'd be able to run, let's say 10 to 15 kilometers at marathon pace in your weekend long run, and then we'd be able to do 6 times a kilometer at maybe marathon pace plus 10% faster than marathon pace during our interval session. If you're a 4-hour marathon runner, it's likely that you cannot do that yet. It's also likely that you might have that top end speed. You might be able to run a fast 5K. It's just that you've not got to a point where you've really executed marathon training well and got the result that you deserve. For me, what this would look like is that typical training week that I've just told you about, and I'd focus on the long run, specific segments within the long run that are at marathon pace. And that might look like, okay, 25 kilometers with the middle 5 kilometers at marathon pace, 4 minutes and 15 seconds per kilometer. Then over the weeks, that gets progressively larger, that segment of marathon pace running. It might be a progressive long run. It's 24 kilometers long, starting with 8 kilometers, very easy. Middle 8 kilometers is maybe marathon pace plus 10 or 20%, then the last 8 kilometers at 4:15 per kilometer. With that midweek interval session, what I would want to be doing is 6 times a kilometer, for example, at 3:50 per kilometer. So 10% faster than my marathon pace or my intended marathon pace. Now, if you're coming from 4 hours marathon, that might be incredibly difficult. And so we've got to work towards it in exactly the same way as we do the long run. So if that initially looks like 6 times a kilometer in 4:30 per kilometer or 5 minutes per kilometer, again, that's your starting point and it's something to work on. What's more important about that interval session and the segments in the specific long run is that you feel in control. You feel like you're pacing it well so that you can complete the sessions, not just one session or the entire week, but sessions, months, the training schedule, week after week, we're able to get that super compensation from the big key sessions. Point number 3, you've got 9 months until you're going to attack that 259 goal, and maybe 6 months until you start that specific training towards that goal. What I would want to be doing, in addition to building aerobic base, is building a strong running body, a robust running body, but also a powerful running body to attack those training times. Now, that doesn't have to be incredibly complicated. All what we want to do is go to the gym once a week, ideally on a Monday, the day after the Sunday long run, and we want to be hitting the glutes, the hamstrings, the big paddle muscles that are going to propel you over the ground, create a longer stride length, but also robust quads and robust lower legs, so we're not getting injured as much. So when we up that volume, that training load, you're able to handle it. Number 4, in order to execute this big goal, taking 1 hour off our marathon time in 9 months and running 2 hours 59, a dream time for you, no doubt. In order to do that, we need to become that sub 3 hour marathon runner. We need to treat our body like a 3 hour marathon runner and ideally like a professional athlete. So you've got to have the fundamentals or the foundation in place. And what I mean by that is when I'm going into a serious training block, all of a sudden priority number 1 becomes reduce stress and quality and quantity of sleep. If you can hit those 2 points, reduce stress, better sleep, all of a sudden diet comes next. You start making good decisions on what you're eating because you're starting to eat like a professional athlete. If you look at just those 3 points, reduce stress, sleep, diet, if those things are in place, we are full steam ahead at our goals. But more importantly, what it's going to mean is consistency, because we've got more respect for the recovery. You're giving your body a better chance of succeeding in that sub 3 hour marathon. And the next thing we need to do on top of that is to become hyper self-aware when to back off, to have the discipline to back off. A lot of people, when they're talking about marathon training, feel that discipline is getting out there early every morning and making it happen whether you feel like it or whether you don't feel it. Another part of discipline is being able to back off when you definitely don't feel like it. You've got to be honest with yourself. This goal is going nowhere, and that will keep you excited and also keep you honest in the training. But from time to time, if you're suffering with illness, if you're suffering with a lack of sleep, with stress, etc., sometimes it's best to back off. And if you've got this time available, 6 to 9 months, you've got the luxury to be able to do that. So number 4 is consistency and recovery. Number 5, and if you get this right, it's going to move you forward than any of the other points. But not only that, you're going to get more out of all the other points that I've discussed. This will move you forward way more than super shoes. And the current data or stats, publications on super shoes, that they're gonna move you forward between 5 and 15%, depending on your running style. This will move you forward more, not only in your racing, but also in your training. I'm talking about race day nutrition. Now, if we were to take 100 4-hour marathon runners and 100 3-hour marathon runners, it's likely that these guys over here have a much bigger respect for race day nutrition. They know a little bit about carb loading, but in terms of executing a gel strategy and taking a gel on a regular basis in order to move them forward and achieve that personal best, these guys are more respectful of race day nutrition. If you were to then take the same group of 3-hour marathon runners and compare them against 2-hour 20 marathon runners or faster, these guys over here not only respect race day nutrition, they know that they cannot run their fastest without optimizing that race day nutrition. And that has improved massively in the last 10 to 15 years. So it's likely for a lot of people, especially if you're scratching the surface to what your potential is in distance running, it's likely that they don't know what optimal is. When I started my distance running journey and started running marathons and ultra marathons, I literally looked on the back of the gel packet of a 25 gram gel, a normal size. Okay, take one of these every 40 minutes. We now know that we can take grams of carbohydrate per hour, we can take double that. So you can be taking 75, 80, and sometimes more grams of carbohydrate per hour. That's optimal. Now, of course, it's slightly individual, but if you hit that 75 to 80 grams, you're not far off. And again, as I said, not only is that going to give you the energy to attack this pace and this big goal, what it's also going to do, which is way more important and affects the rest of your training, is if you implement that same race day strategy in your interval training and in your long day training, what that's going to do for you is you're not going to get the same muscle breakdown. So therefore your recovery is quicker. And what it's going to lead to for both the interval day and the long run day is then you know that you can push harder on those 2 days and get more super compensation. And if you look at a specific marathon block of 13 weeks, and if you take 10 days to 14 days taper, so let's say 11 weeks of dedicated training, that's 22 sessions that we get super compensation from, or the main sessions that we get the super compensation from. Why would you not want to maximize the amount that you can get out of each one of those sessions? So if you think about it, you got 9 months. You're going to establish a solid aerobic base. You're going to put a structure to work and get towards letting your body handle that training load. You're working towards, and you're working like a sub 3-hour marathon runner. You're then going to introduce marathon specific workouts. So it's going to allow you to spend more time moving over the ground, specifically at marathon pace, and then faster in interval sessions. You're then respecting consistency and recovery. You understand that the magic happens once you get consistent and you have unbroken training blocks. So that reduced stress, that improved quality and quantity of your sleep, all of those things set you up for success and allow you to attack this 259, putting ourselves in a place where not only can we absorb the training, but we're also reducing the injury risk. Then all of a sudden, let's say our current nutrition plan for race day is a 2 out of 10. We're moving that up to 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10. Imagine how all of those points compound in order to make you a completely different runner. So if you're committed and you've got that work ethic, that discipline, that drive, the dedication, the determination, this kind of progress in 9 months is not just possible, it's probable. And for me, it's the obvious next step for you to take. Just because you've ran 4 hours for the marathon, it doesn't mean that you should be aiming for 3:45 or something relative to 4 hours. If you change yourself into a completely different runner and do different things, the right things to move you forward as a sub 3-hour marathon runner, that's what you can be aiming for. And because you've stayed to the end, here's a pro point. Number 1, send me your email address via email and I'll send you a t-shirt to you who asked the question. The second point is book a race and put it in the calendar. 13 weeks from now, run your fastest possible 5K. If that's a park run, so be it. If it's an organized race, even better. Get used to racing along this journey. And if that's a sub 25-minute 5K, click on this link and it'll help you get there. If it's a sub 20-minute 5K, go for this link.